What happens when your own nephew tries to ship you off to a care home, believing you're too old and weak to fight back? This Christmas, Amy's spoiled nephew handed me a folder instead of a gift. Inside was a care home intake form and a ride schedule. But when the front door opened and he saw who came to pick me up, his smirk vanished and the real reckoning began. The smell of pot roast filled my kitchen as I carefully arranged the dining table for two. Warren Harlan, that's me, 62 years old, retired school custodian, and apparently the world's biggest pushover according to my nephew. I'd spent the afternoon preparing his favorite meal, hoping we could have one quiet dinner together without his friends barging in. "Uncle Warren!" Brent Foster's voice boomed from the living room where he'd been glued to his gaming setup all day. At 20 years old, my sister's boy had the entitlement of a trust fund kid and the work ethic of a sloth. "Change of plans, old man. Jackson and the crew are coming over for a tournament. We'll need the dining room." I paused, serving spoon halfway to the mashed potatoes. "Brent, I already made dinner. I thought we could—" Yeah, whatever. Order us some pizzas instead." He didn't even look up from his screen, fingers mashing buttons with the same intensity he applied to avoiding responsibility. "And make sure you get the good stuff, not that cheap garbage you usually buy." Within an hour, my quiet home transformed into a frat house. Jackson Myers, Brent's loudest friend, burst through the front door without knocking, followed by 3 other 20-somethings who treated my living room like their personal playground. They cranked the music so loud the windows rattled, scattered empty energy drink cans across my coffee table, and commandeered every comfortable seat in the house. "Yo, Uncle Warren," Jackson called out, using the title mockingly. "Bring us some snacks, would you? And maybe crack a window. It's getting stuffy in here." I retreated to my bedroom, but the bass from their music pounded through the walls. Around midnight, they moved the party to the backyard patio, their voices echoing across the neighborhood. Mrs. Greta Lawrence, my 75-year-old neighbor and former teacher, appeared at my front door in her bathrobe at 12:30 a.m. "Warren, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said, her weathered face creased with concern. "But the noise is keeping the whole block awake. The Hendersons have their baby, and I'll handle it right away, Greta. I'm so sorry." Heat flooded my cheeks as I hurried to the backyard, where Brent and his friends had turned my patio furniture into a makeshift beer pong table. "Brent, you need to keep it down. The neighbors are complaining." He barely glanced at me, red solo cup in hand. "Relax, Warren. It's Friday night. Live a little." "It's Tuesday night and some people have work in the morning." Jackson snorted. "What work? You're retired, dude. What else you got to do?" The next evening, hoping to get out of the house and maybe salvage some dignity, I decided to join the weekly trivia night at the Lantern, a cozy neighborhood bar where I'd been a regular for years. The bartender, Pete, always saved me a spot at the counter, and I enjoyed the friendly competition with other locals. I was halfway through the sports round when Brent and his crew strolled in, clearly already several drinks deep from pre-gaming at home. My stomach dropped as I watched them claim the large corner booth, their voices immediately drowning out the trivia host. Well, Brent's voice carried across the entire bar. "Look who's out past his bedtime. Hey everyone, that's my Uncle Warren over there. Say hi, Uncle Warren." Every head in the bar turned toward me. I managed a weak wave, my face burning with embarrassment. "He's the guy who cleans up after us," Jackson announced to their table, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Pretty sweet gig, right, Warren? Free maid service." The regular trivia crowd, people I'd known for years, shifted uncomfortably. Pete, the bartender, shot me a sympathetic look, but the damage was done. I finished my beer in silence and slipped out during the commercial break, Brent's laughter following me to the parking lot. When I returned home, I found them back in my living room, sprawled across my furniture like they owned the place. As I headed upstairs to my bedroom, I caught fragments of their conversation. "Dude, your uncle is such a pushover," one of them said. "I know, right?" Brent's voice was full of smug satisfaction. Mom thinks he's doing me some huge favor, but honestly, he's lucky I let him stay. Once I figure out how to push him out of the picture, I'll have this whole place to myself. The guy's basically a useless burden anyway. I closed my bedroom door softly, my hands trembling with a mixture of rage and shame. A useless burden. In my own house. The house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 15 years before my sister Marissa even asked me to look after her son. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my calendar. There it was, circled in red. Marissa returns, deck 23. 3 weeks away. I stared at that date for a long time, then picked up a red pen from my nightstand and traced over the circle until the ink bled through the paper. The next morning, I sat in my bedroom with a cup of coffee, staring at the framed photo on my dresser. Marissa in her Antarctic research gear, grinning beside a massive ice core sample. Dr. Marissa Foster, Antarctic climate researcher, my brilliant little sister who saved the world one ice sample at a time. She'd called me 2 years ago with what she promised would be a simple request. Warren, I know it's a lot to ask, but this research opportunity is once in a lifetime. The Antarctic station needs someone for an extended deployment, could be 18 months, maybe 2 years. Brent's starting college, and I hate the thought of him being completely alone. I'd looked around my quiet house, my peaceful retirement routine, and said yes without hesitation. Family was family. Brent was 19 then, supposedly mature enough to handle community college, while I provided a stable home base. Just until I get back, Marissa had promised. He's a good kid, Warren, just needs some guidance. That was 26 months ago. The good kid was currently fast asleep in what used to be my home office, having turned it into his personal disaster zone. I stood in his doorway, surveying the wreckage, pizza boxes stacked like cardboard skyscrapers, dirty clothes forming geological layers across the floor, and my grandmother's antique desk buried under energy drink cans and gaming equipment. Brent, I called softly. No response. Brent, we need to talk about the house rules. He rolled over, one eye cracking open. What time is it? 2 in the afternoon. Ugh, way too early, man. Can this wait? You missed your morning classes again? It's fine, Uncle Warren. I'll catch up. He pulled a pillow over his head. And hey, can you do laundry today? I'm out of clean stuff. I closed the door and walked to the kitchen, where I found the bank statement that had arrived in yesterday's mail. The joint account Marissa had set up for Brent's expenses told a story that made tension surge through me. With $200 at GameStop, $800 at some trendy clothing store, $600 at a high-end electronics shop, $400 for entertainment charges I didn't recognize. In 1 month, he'd burned through more money than I spent in 3. Later that afternoon, I spotted Brent at the supermarket while running my own errands. He was in the electronics section, chatting with a sales associate about the latest gaming headset, a $300 piece of equipment to replace the perfectly good one he'd bought 3 months earlier. Brent, I approached carefully. What are you doing here? Oh, hey Warren, just picking up a few things. He gestured casually at his cart, loaded with premium steaks, imported beer, and enough junk food to stock a convenience store. Mom sent extra money this month, so I figured why not live a little. Your mom sent that money for tuition and textbooks. The spring semester starts in 6 weeks. He waved dismissively. I'll figure that out later. Besides, I'm thinking of taking a gap year anyway. College is kind of a waste of time, don't you think? I watched him add the expensive headset to his cart, my jaw clenching. This was Marissa's hard-earned research grant money, funds she'd secured through years of grueling work in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, and her son was treating it like monopoly money. Walking home, I took my usual route past Mrs. Lawrence's house. She was tending to her winter garden, pulling the last stubborn weeds before the first frost. Warren, she called out, straightening slowly. How are you holding up, dear? I'm fine, Greta. How's your back feeling? Oh, you know how it is at my age, but I'm not the one I'm worried about. She glanced toward my house, where Brent's music was already thumping through the windows. "That boy of yours has been quite the handful lately." I followed her gaze. "He's going through a phase." "Warren." Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years managing teenagers. "I taught high school for 4 decades. I know the difference between a phase and a pattern. Last week, I watched him curse you out on your own front porch because you asked him to move his car. That's not normal behavior." My shoulders sagged. "His mother will be back soon. Things will settle down." Will they? Because from what I've observed, that young man has no respect for you whatsoever, and respect isn't something that just appears when mommy comes home. She pulled off her gardening gloves, studying my face. "If you ever need someone to back up your side of things, you just let me know. I've been keeping notes." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at another bank statement that had arrived in the afternoon mail. More charges, more waste, more evidence of Brent's complete disregard for the sacrifices his mother was making. As I organized the papers, Brent stumbled into the kitchen, clearly hungover from another late night. "Morning, Uncle Warren," he mumbled, though it was nearly dinner time. "We need to talk about your spending." "What about it?" "You've gone through $8,000 in 2 months. That money is supposed to last you through the spring semester." Brent opened the refrigerator, pulling out an energy drink. "Mom will send more. She always does." "Brent, your mother is working in Antarctica. She's living in a research station with no heat, eating freeze-dried food, and sleeping in a tent. She's making these sacrifices so you can get an education." "Yeah, well, that was her choice." He popped open the drink, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. "I didn't ask her to go play in the snow." The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. "That's your mother you're talking about. And you're just the babysitter." His eyes met mine, cold and calculating. "So maybe worry about your own business, Warren. Because when Mom gets back, I'm going to make sure she knows exactly how this arrangement is going to work going forward. And spoiler alert, it doesn't include you calling the shots." He walked away, leaving me alone with the bank statements and the growing realization that my quiet patience had been mistaken for weakness. But Brent had made one crucial error in his calculations. He assumed I was just the babysitter. He forgot I was also the homeowner. The community center incident happened on a Thursday night in early December. I was settling in for a quiet evening when my phone rang, the caller ID showing the community center's main office. "Mr. Harlan, this is Janet from Riverside Community Center. We have a situation with the event space you rented tonight." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what event space?" "The main hall. It's reserved under your name for a private party, but we've had multiple noise complaints from the neighboring businesses. The renters are refusing to cooperate with our staff, and there's been some property damage." I was already reaching for my car keys. "I'll be right there." The scene that greeted me at the community center was worse than I'd imagined. The main hall, a space typically used for wedding receptions and graduation parties, looked like a war zone. Folding chairs were overturned, there were stains on the carpet that I didn't want to identify, and someone had apparently tried to move the heavy wooden podium, leaving deep scratches in the hardwood floor. Brent stood in the center of it all with Jackson, and about 15 other people I didn't recognize, red solo cups in hand, music blasting from a portable speaker system they'd somehow smuggled in. "Brent!" I had to shout over the noise. "What is this?" "Oh, hey, Uncle Warren." He was clearly drunk, swaying slightly as he approached. "Thanks for putting your name on the rental form. Couldn't have done it without you, buddy." "I didn't rent this space. I've never even been here before tonight." Jackson laughed, slapping Brent on the back. "Dude, your uncle is hilarious. I've never been here before." Classic. The community center manager, a stressed-looking woman in her 50s, approached with a clipboard and a very stern expression. "Mr. Harlan, I need you to get your party under control immediately, or we'll have to call the police. The damage deposit you paid won't begin to cover the repairs needed." "What damage deposit?" She showed me the rental agreement, my name forged in Brent's sloppy handwriting, along with my address and a fake signature. The rental fee and deposit totaled $800. "I didn't sign this," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I realized how ridiculous they sounded. Who else would have used my name and address? It took 2 hours to clear everyone out and another hour to assess the damage. The final bill came to $1,200, money I didn't have, for an event I didn't authorize, to clean up a mess I didn't make. But my name was on the paperwork, and the community center didn't care about family drama. When we got home, Brent and Jackson were laughing about the whole situation. "Did you see the look on that manager lady's face?" Jackson was practically in tears. "She was so mad. And Warren just standing there like, 'I didn't sign this.'" Brent mimicked my voice in a high, whiny tone. "Dude, you should have seen yourself. It was pathetic." "You forged my signature," I said quietly. "Prove it." Brent's eyes were cold now, the drunk friendliness evaporating. "Besides, what are you going to do about it? Call my mom? She's literally at the bottom of the world. Call the cops? Good luck explaining how your own nephew stole your identity." That night, after they'd finally passed out in the living room, I sat in my home office, the small den off the kitchen that I'd managed to keep as my own space. I pulled out a manila folder and began organizing every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, rental agreements, photos of the damage to my house from their parties. I documented everything methodically: dates, times, amounts, witnesses. Mrs. Lawrence had mentioned keeping notes. Maybe it was time I started doing the same. The breaking point came 3 days later. I was reading in my bedroom when I heard voices in the hallway outside my door. "Seriously, just lock him out," Jackson was saying. "It's not like he can do anything about it." "I need the living room for the tournament tomorrow," Brent replied. "Warren always wants to watch his stupid old movies on Sunday nights. It's annoying." I heard the distinctive sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. They'd installed a lock on my own living room door, a room in the house I owned, in the house I'd been paying for since before Brent was even born. When I tried the handle, it was indeed locked. I knocked softly. "Sorry, Warren," Brent called through the door. "We need some space for setup. You understand, right? Maybe find something else to do tonight." I stood in my own hallway, locked out of my own living room, listening to them laugh about it on the other side of the door. That's when I realized that quiet patience wasn't going to solve this problem. Brent had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my love for his mother as leverage he could exploit. But Brent didn't know about the folder I was building. He didn't know about Mrs. Lawrence's notes, or the bank statements I'd been copying, or the photos I'd been taking of every piece of damage. And he definitely didn't know about the phone call I was about to make to my old friend Lionel Barrett, the best family law attorney in 3 counties. Lionel Barrett's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that inspired confidence with its leather-bound law books and rich mahogany furniture. I'd known Lionel since high school. We'd played on the same baseball team, double-dated to prom, and stayed in touch through Christmas cards and the occasional beer. But I'd never needed his professional services before. "Warren Harlan," he stood up from behind his massive desk, extending a firm handshake. "It's been too long, my friend. Though I have to say, when you called asking about family law, you got my attention." I settled into the client chair, the manila folder heavy in my lap. "Lionel, I need to understand my legal options. It's about my nephew." For the next hour, I laid out the entire situation. Lionel listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, I opened my folder and spread the contents across his desk. Bank statements, photos of property damage, copies of the forged rental agreement, a timeline of incidents I'd documented. Lionel studied each piece of evidence carefully, his expression growing more serious. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Warren, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You own the house outright? Paid off the mortgage in 2018? And your sister asked you to provide housing for her son, but there's no formal lease agreement or rental contract? Nothing in writing. She just asked if he could stay while she was in Antarctica. How long was this arrangement supposed to last? She said 18 months, maybe 2 years. It's been 26 months. Lionel made another note. And the joint bank account. Who's the primary account holder? Marissa, but she added Brent as a user and me as a backup contact for emergencies. Do you have documentation of the unauthorized charges? I slid the bank statements across the desk. $8,000 in 2 months. Gaming equipment, clothes, entertainment. Nothing related to education or legitimate expenses. Lionel studied the statements, whistling softly. This is good documentation, Warren. Very thorough. He looked up at me with something like admiration. You've been planning this for a while. I've been hoping it wouldn't come to this, but Brent made it clear that when his mother returns, he intends to have me removed from my own home. Well, here's the thing. He can't. You're the homeowner. Your sister has no legal claim to the property, and neither does her son. If anything, Brent is a guest in your home, and guests can be asked to leave. What about the property damage? The forged signature. The property damage gives you grounds for compensation. The forgery is technically fraud, though proving intent might be tricky. But taken together, Lionel gathered the papers into a neat stack. You have a very strong case for immediate eviction and financial restitution. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders for the first time in months. What do I need to do? First, keep documenting everything. Second, I'll prepare an official eviction notice. 30 days is standard, but given the property damage and fraudulent activity, we might be able to expedite that. Third, when your sister returns, you'll need to present this evidence to her directly. You think she'll side with me? Lionel's smile was grim. Warren, if my 20-year-old son had racked up $8,000 in unauthorized charges and was treating my brother like a servant in his own home, I'd side with my brother too. Your sister is a scientist. She deals in facts and evidence. You've got plenty of both. That evening, I returned home to find Brent on the phone in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Yeah, I already filled out the paperwork, he was saying. Sunset Manor has an opening next week. It's perfect timing. Mom gets back on the 23rd and Warren will already be settled in his new place. A sharp chill ran through me. I stepped back into the hallway, straining to hear more. The intake process is super easy. They said lots of families do it around the holidays, when the old folks become too much to handle. I'll just tell Mom that Warren was getting confused, maybe having some memory issues. She'll totally buy it. I crept closer to the kitchen doorway. The best part is, once he's in the care home, I'll have full run of this place. Mom will probably let me stay here permanently. I mean, someone needs to maintain the property, right? Sunset Manor. I knew the place, a legitimate nursing care facility about 20 miles away. Brent was actually planning to have me committed to a nursing home. The audacity was breathtaking. Nah, he won't fight it, Brent continued. Warren's too much of a pushover. Besides, who's he going to complain to? Mom will be jet-lagged and exhausted. She'll just want the situation handled. I backed away from the kitchen, my heart pounding. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was a calculated attempt to steal my home and my freedom. But Brent had made one crucial mistake. He assumed I was helpless. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and opened my laptop. First, I uploaded digital copies of all my evidence to a secure cloud storage account. Then I created a backup folder and saved it to a flash drive. Finally, I sent a carefully worded email to Marissa's emergency contact address, the one she used for urgent communications from the research station. Marissa, I typed, I know you're busy with your research, but when you return on December 23rd, we need to have a serious family conversation about Brent's behavior and future living arrangements. I have documentation of some concerning incidents that require your immediate attention. I hope your final weeks in Antarctica are going well. Love, Warren. I hit send, then sat back in my chair. The pieces were falling into place. Brent thought he was playing chess, but he'd been playing checkers all along, and he was about to discover that his quiet, patient Uncle Warren, had been several moves ahead the entire time. December 23rd arrived with the kind of crisp winter morning that made everything seem possible. I was up early, preparing for what I knew would be the most important Christmas dinner of my life. The turkey was in the oven, the dining room table was set for 4, and my evidence folder was locked in the dining room hutch, with a duplicate copy hidden in the guest room where Marissa would be staying. Around noon, I walked next door to Mrs. Lawrence's house. She answered the door in her best Christmas sweater, her silver hair perfectly styled. "Warren, dear, what can I do for you?" "Greta, I know this is short notice, but would you like to join us for dessert tonight? Around 7:30? I'm expecting some family drama, and I could use a friendly witness." Her eyes sharpened with understanding. The boy finally pushed too far. "Let's just say tonight's going to be interesting." "I'll be there. And Warren, I'll bring my phone, the one with the good camera." Back at home, Brent was unusually cheerful, humming Christmas carols while he set up some kind of elaborate surprise in the living room. I caught glimpses of official-looking paperwork and what appeared to be a gift-wrapped folder. "Big day today, Uncle Warren," he said, not looking up from his preparations. "Mom's flight lands at 4, right? This is going to be the best Christmas ever. I'm sure it will be memorable." Around 3 o'clock, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Transportation arranged for 6 p.m. pickup. Sunset Manor intake ready. Patient, Warren Harlan." So Brent had actually arranged for a care home transport van to pick me up during dinner. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. He'd planned this like a military operation. Present the intake forms to Marissa as a fait accompli, have me whisked away before I could object, and position himself as the responsible nephew who'd solved a difficult family problem. What he didn't know was that I'd been planning too. At 4:15, my phone rang. Marissa's voice, calling from the airport. "Warren, I just landed. God, it feels good to hear a familiar voice. How's everything at home?" "Interesting. Brent's been busy while you were away." "I hope he hasn't been too much trouble. I know 20-year-olds can be a handful." "We'll discuss it over dinner. Welcome home, sis." "I can't wait to see you both. I'll grab a cab and be home in an hour." I hung up and found Brent watching me from the kitchen doorway. "Mom's on her way? Should be here around 5:30. "Perfect." His smile was predatory. "I can't wait to give you your Christmas present, Uncle Warren. I think you're really going to be surprised." "I'm sure I will be." The next hour passed in tense preparation. Brent showered and dressed in his best clothes, probably the first time he'd worn anything without holes in it since Marissa left. He kept checking his phone, presumably coordinating with the transport service. At 5:45, I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the front window, I watched Marissa emerge from a taxi, dragging a large duffel bag and looking exactly like someone who'd spent 2 years in Antarctica. She was thinner than I remembered, her face weathered by harsh winds, but her smile was the same. Brent rushed to greet her at the door, wrapping her in an elaborate hug. "Mom, you look amazing. How was the flight? How was Antarctica? I've missed you so much." "Oh, honey, I've missed you too." She hugged him tightly, then looked over his shoulder at me. "Warren, come here and give your sister a proper welcome home hug." The 3 of us stood in my entryway, and for a moment, it felt like a normal family reunion. Marissa looked tired but happy. Brent was playing the perfect son, and I was the patient uncle who'd kept everything together. "Dinner smells incredible," Marissa said. "Warren, you've outdone yourself." "It's nothing special, just wanted to welcome you home properly." We moved to the dining room, where I'd set the table with my best china and silverware. Marissa took the seat at one end, Brent and I sat across from each other, and there was an empty chair for Mrs. Lawrence when she arrived for dessert. "So," Marissa said, cutting into her turkey, "tell me everything. How was school, Brent? How have you two been getting along?" Brent launched into an elaborate fiction about his academic achievements and how well we'd bonded during her absence. According to his version, He'd been the perfect houseguest, and I'd been like a father figure to him. Uncle Warren's been great, Mom. Really great. In fact, I got him a special Christmas present to show how much I appreciate everything he's done. He reached under the table and produced a small wrapped folder, placing it in front of me with a theatrical flourish. Go ahead, Uncle Warren. Open it. I looked at Marissa, who was smiling expectantly. Aren't you sweet, Brent? Warren, open your gift. I unwrapped the folder slowly, my hands perfectly steady. Inside were the care home intake forms, filled out in Brent's handwriting, along with a transportation schedule for Sunset Manor. What is this? I asked, though I knew exactly what it was. Brent's smile was triumphant. It's your new living situation, Uncle Warren. I know how hard it's been for you, trying to keep up with everything around here. Sunset Manor is a beautiful facility. They'll take great care of you. Marissa leaned forward, confused. Brent, what are you talking about? Well, Mom, I didn't want to worry you while you were away, but Uncle Warren's been having some issues. Memory problems, confusion, difficulty managing daily tasks. I think it's time he had professional care. Memory problems? Marissa looked at me with concern. Warren, you never mentioned... That's when we heard the horn outside, right on schedule. Brent's smile widened. Don't worry, Uncle Warren. Finish your dinner and they'll come get you. I've already packed a bag with your essentials. I stood up slowly, the intake forms still in my hand. How thoughtful of you, Brent. I just want what's best for everyone. The horn sounded again, longer this time. I suppose I should see who's here, I said, walking toward the front door. Brent followed, practically bouncing with excitement. This is going to work out great for everyone, Mom. Uncle Warren gets the care he needs and we can finally have some family time without worrying about... I opened the front door. Standing on my front porch was Dr. Marissa Foster, suitcase in hand, having apparently walked around from the back of the house where she'd been listening at the kitchen window. Brent's smile disappeared instantly. Mom? But you're... How are you... We just saw you... I came in through the back door 20 minutes ago, Marissa said, her voice ice cold. I wanted to surprise you both, and boy, have I been surprised. She stepped into the house, her eyes moving from Brent's shocked face to the intake forms in my hand to the transport van idling in the driveway. Brent, she said quietly, what exactly is going on here? I reached into the dining room hutch and pulled out my evidence folder, placing it in her hands. Marissa, I said calmly, I think it's time you learned what your son has really been doing while you were saving the world. Marissa opened the evidence folder with the methodical precision of a scientist examining a crucial data set. Her face grew paler with each page. Bank statements showing Brent's reckless spending, photos of property damage throughout my house, copies of the forged community center rental agreement, and a detailed timeline of incidents spanning the past 6 months. $8,000? Her voice was barely a whisper. Brent, you spent $8,000 in 2 months? Mom, I can explain. On what? Gaming equipment, clothes, entertainment? She flipped through the bank statements, her hands shaking slightly. This was your tuition money. This was your living expenses for the entire year. Brent's confident demeanor was cracking. It's not as bad as it looks. Warren's exaggerating everything. You know how old people get confused about... Confused? Marissa's voice rose sharply. Warren documented everything with dates, times, and photographic evidence. This isn't confusion, Brent. This is fraud. Mrs. Lawrence appeared in the doorway, having let herself in through the unlocked front door. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Actually, Greta, your timing is perfect. I turned to Marissa. Mrs. Lawrence has been witnessing Brent's behavior for months. She's kept her own records. The elderly woman pulled out her smartphone with the confidence of someone who'd adapted to modern technology out of necessity. I have videos, dear. Would you like to see the one where your son yelled at Warren for asking him to move his car? Or perhaps the recording of him telling his friends that Warren was a useless burden and that he couldn't wait to get rid of him. Brent's face went white. You were recording me? I was documenting a pattern of elder abuse, Mrs. Lawrence replied crisply. 40 years of teaching teenagers taught me to keep good records. Marissa sank into the nearest chair, still clutching the evidence folder. Brent, please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you haven't been treating Warren like this. Mom, you don't understand. Living here has been really stressful. Warren's always on my case about money and parties and… Warren's house! Marissa's voice cracked like a whip. This is Warren's house, Brent. He owns it. He's been letting you live here as a favor to me. But I thought… you said this was going to be my place while you were gone. I said Warren would provide you with housing. That's not the same thing as giving you his house. She stood up, pacing to the window where the transport van was still idling. And what is that vehicle doing in our driveway? Brent's last desperate gambit crumbled. I thought maybe it was time for Warren to have some professional care. Because of his age and… His age? Marissa whirled around. Brent, Warren is 62 years old. He's not elderly, he's not confused, and he certainly doesn't need to be committed to a nursing home. She held up the intake forms. These forms list his mental state as declining and his physical condition as requires assistance with daily living. Did you fill these out? I was trying to help. You were trying to steal his house. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. That's when the front door opened again, and Lionel Barrett stepped inside, briefcase in hand and official documents tucked under his arm. Warren, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I have those papers you requested. He surveyed the scene. Marissa holding the evidence folder, Brent looking like he'd seen a ghost, Mrs. Lawrence with her phone ready to record, and the care home transport van visible through the window. Lionel, I said, I'd like you to meet my sister, Dr. Marissa Foster. Marissa, this is Lionel Barrett, my attorney. Your attorney? Brent's voice cracked. Lionel opened his briefcase with professional efficiency. I have here a formal eviction notice for Brent Foster, citing property damage, fraudulent use of identity, and violation of the terms of his residency. I also have a civil complaint seeking restitution for damages totaling $3,200, plus legal fees. He handed the documents to Marissa, who read them with the same scientific thoroughness she'd applied to the evidence folder. This is all legally binding? She asked. Completely. Warren has been more than patient, Dr. Foster. In fact, he's been documenting this situation for months, hoping it wouldn't come to legal action. But the attempt to have him involuntarily committed to a care facility crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. Marissa looked at her son, her face a mixture of disappointment and disgust. Brent, is there anything at all, that you'd like to say in your defense? Brent opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since I'd known him, he was completely speechless. I didn't think so. Marissa walked to the front door and opened it wide. The van outside is here for you, not for Warren. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your belongings and leave this house. You will not be returning. Mom, you can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, Brent. You're 20 years old. You've had 2 years to figure out how to be a responsible adult, and instead you chose to abuse the kindness of the one person who was trying to help you. But I don't have any money. I don't have anywhere to go. Marissa's laugh was bitter. You had $8,000. You chose to spend it on toys instead of securing your future. That was your choice. Lionel stepped forward, his voice professionally neutral. Mr. Foster, I should mention that if you're not off the property within the hour, the eviction becomes a trespassing issue and will need to involve the police. Brent looked around the room desperately, at his mother's disgusted face, at Mrs. Lawrence's stern expression, at Lionel's legal documents, and finally at me. Uncle Warren, he said, his voice small and pleading. Come on, man. We're family. You can't really want this. I looked at him for a long moment, remembering the scared 19-year-old who'd arrived at my door 2 years ago, and comparing him to the entitled, manipulative young man who'd tried to have me committed to a nursing home. "Brent," I said quietly, "you stopped being family the moment you decided I was nothing but a burden." Marissa ripped the care home intake forms in half, the sound sharp in the silent room. "1 hour, Brent. Then you're gone." Brent stared at his mother, at the torn papers, at the eviction notice in Lionel's hands. His face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a dawning realization that his carefully constructed plan had not just failed, it had backfired spectacularly. Without another word, he turned and walked upstairs to pack his belongings, his footsteps heavy on the stairs I'd climbed every night for the past 2 years, listening to his parties, his disrespect, his plans to steal my life. Lionel closed his briefcase with a satisfied snap. Mrs. Lawrence smiled and slipped her phone back into her pocket. Marissa sank into my favorite armchair, looking exhausted but relieved, and I stood in the doorway of my own home, watching the transport van pull away empty, finally understanding what victory felt like.